moments, Miss Karen. We started to read A Cow on the Line, and then my battery got low, sorry. So we have all our friends here. We have Salty, because we're up to the letter T, and we're up to Thomas, the tank engine. Okay, and we have James, okay? And we have, who's this? The green engine. This is Percy. And then we have, of course, Thomas. Beep, beep. And then I have, what are the dot cars? We have Harvey here. Okay, so we have our reading engines and our book we're going to finish, A Cow on the Line. Okay, well, these guys, they're watching because there's a chicken on the line. I couldn't get all my stuff out because I have a huge miniature dollhouse where we store all my daughter's Thomas stuff. But I could get out some of our engines for us to join as we read in our book and continue on with our story, A Cow on the Line. So Edward, where's Edward? I don't have Edward today. Edward was getting old. His bearings were worn, and he clanked as he puffed along. He was taking empty cattle cars to a market town. The sun shone, birds sang, but Edward was heading for trouble. Come on, he puffed. Oh, 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 screamed the cars. Edward puffed, and he clanked. The car rattled, and he screamed, oh, oh. Some cows were grazing nearby. They were not used to the trains. The noise and the smoke disturbed them. As Edward clanked by, they broke through the fence and ran across the line. A coupling was broken, and some of the cars were left behind. Uh-oh. Edward felt a jerk, but didn't take much notice. He was used to cattle cars. Bother those cars, he thought. Why can't they come quietly? He was at the next station before either he or his driver realized what had happened. Uh-oh. He left some cows behind. When Gordon and Henry heard about the accident, they laughed and boasted. Fancy allowing cars to break his train. They wouldn't dare do that to us. We'd show 'em. Old Toby was cross. You couldn't help it, Edward. They never met cows. I have, and I know the trouble they are. Some days later, Gordon rushed through Edward's station. Boop, boop. Mind the cows. Hurry, 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 puffed Gordon. Don't make such a fuss. Don't make such a fuss, grumbled his coaches. A long stretch of line lay ahead. In the distance was a bridge. It seemed to Gordon that there was something on the bridge. His driver thought so, too. Whoa, Gordon, he said, and he shut off his steam. Pooh, said Gordon. It's only a cow. Oops. Shoo! Shoo! He moved slowly onto the bridge, but the cow wouldn't shoot. She had lost her calf and felt lonely. Moo, moo, she said sadly. Everyone tried to send her away, but she wouldn't go. Henry arrived. What's this? A cow? I'll soon settle her. Be off, be off. Moo, moo, said the cow. Henry backed away nervously. I don't want to hurt her. At the next station, Henry's conductor told them about the cow and warned the signalman, and the line was blocked. That must be Bluebell, said the porter. Her calf is here, looking for her mother. Percy will take her along. At the bridge, Bluebell was very pleased to see her calf again, and the porter led them away. Not a word. Keep it dark, whispered Gordon and Henry to each other. They felt silly, but the story soon spread. Moo! 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 Well, 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 chuckled Edward. 2 big engines afraid of a cow. Afraid of rubbish, said Gordon. We didn't want the poor thing to hurt herself by running up against us. We stopped so as not to excite her. You see what I mean, my dear Edward? "Yes, Gordon," said Edward. Gordon felt somehow that Edward saw only all too well. Okay, so here's another one. It's called Old Iron, and I think this one stars James. Okay, so here's James, the tank engine. Get him back here. Get our tank crew up there, ready for our story. One day, James had to wait at the station till Edward and his train came in. They made him cross. Late again. Edward laughed and James fumed away. After James had finished his work, he went back to the yard and puffed onto the turntable. He was still feeling very bad-tempered. "Edward is impossible," he grumbled to the others. "He clanks about like a lot of old iron, and he is so slow. He makes us wait." Thomas and Percy were indignant. "Old iron? Slow? Why, Edward could beat you in a race any day." "Really?" said James. "I should like to see him do that." The next morning, James's driver was suddenly taken ill. He could hardly stand, so the firemen uncoupled James, ready for shunting. James was impatient. Suddenly, the signalman shouted. There was James, puffing away down the line. "All traffic halted," he announced at last. Then he told the firemen what had happened. 2 boys were on James's footplate, fiddling with the controls. Phew! They tumbled off and ran when James started. Ring! The signalman answered the telephone. "Yes?" He's here." "Right, I'll tell him. The inspector's coming at once. He wants a shunter's pole and a coil of wire rope." "What for?" wondered the fireman. "Search me, but you'd better get it quickly." The fireman was ready when Edward arrived. The inspector saw the pole and the rope. "Good man, jump in." We'll catch him, puffed Edward. James was laughing. What a lark! What a lark! He chuckled to himself. Suddenly, he was going faster and faster. He realized that he had no driver. "What shall I do? What shall I do? I can't stop! Help! Help! We're coming! We're coming!" called Edward. Edward was panting up behind with every ounce of steam he had. At last, he caught up with James. "Steady, Edward," called his driver. The inspector stood on Edward's front, holding a noose of rope in the crook of the shunter's pole. He was trying to slip it over James's buffer. The engines swayed and they lurched. "At last! Got him!" he shouted. He pulled the noose tight, gently braking Edward's driver, checking the engine speed, and James's fireman scrambled across and took control. "So, the old iron caught you after all," chuckled Edward. "I'm sorry," whispered James. "Thank you for saving me. You were splendid, Edward." "That's all right," replied Edward. The engines arrived at the station side by side. Sir Topham Hatt was waiting. "A fine piece of work," he said. "James, you can rest and then take your train. I'm proud of you, Edward. You shall go to the works and have your works parts mended." "Oh, thank you, sir," said Edward. "I'll be lovely not to clank." And our next story, Percy takes a plunge. Okay, so who's Percy? Remember who Percy is? Percy's the green engine. Boop, boop. Okay, so here's our little Percy. Yeah, he's a really hard worker. Okay, so, all right, train crew, you ready? Okay, here comes our next story. Percy takes the plunge. One day, Henry wanted to rest, but Percy was talking to some engines. He was telling them about the time he had braved bad weather to help Thomas. "It was raining hard. Water swirled under my boiler. I couldn't see where I was going, but I struggled on." "Oh, Percy, you are brave." "Well, it wasn't anything really. Water's nothing to an engine with determination." Tell us more, Percy. What are you Injuns doing here? Hissed Henry. His shed is for Sir Topham Hatt's Injuns. Go away, silly things, Henry snorted. They're not silly. Percy had been enjoying himself. They are silly, and so are you. Water's nothing to an Injun with determination. Huh! Anyway, said cheeky Percy, I'm not afraid of water. I like it. He ran off to the harbor singing. Once an Injun attached to a train was afraid of a few drops of rain. No one ever tells me to forget the time I wouldn't come out of a tunnel in case the rain spoiled my paint, huffed Henry. Thomas was looking at a board on the quay. Danger. Injuns must not pass this board. That's orders. Why? Danger means something's falling down, said Thomas. I went past danger once and fell down a mine. I can't see a mine, said Percy. He didn't know that the foundations of the quarry had sunk. The rails now sloped downward to the sea. Stupid board, said Percy. Percy made a plan. One day, he whispered to his cars, will you give me a bump when we get to the quay? The cars had never been asked to bump an engine before. They giggled and chattered about it. Driver doesn't know my plan, chuckled Percy. On, laughed the cars. Percy thought they were helping. I'll pretend to stop at the station, but the cars will push me past the board. Then I'll make them stop. I can do whatever I like. Every wise engine knows that you cannot trust freight cars. Go on, they yelled, and bumped Percy's driver and fireman off the footplate. Oh, said Percy, slipping past the board. Percy was frantic. That's enough! Percy was sunk. You were a very disobedient engine. Percy knew that voice. Please, sir, get me out, sir. I'm truly sorry, sir. No, Percy, we cannot do that till high tide. I hope it will teach you to take care of yourself. Yes, sir. It was dark when they brought floating cranes to rescue Percy. He was too cold and stiff to move by himself. Next day, he was sent to the works on Henry's freight train. Well, chuckled Henry. Did you like the water? No. I'm surprised. You need more determination, Percy. Water's nothing to an engine with determination, you know. Perhaps you will like it better next time. Percy is quite determined that there will not be a next time. Okay, so Percy here, Percy likes to be a cheeky little engine, you know. He seems to think that he's bigger than he really is. And sometimes he's too big for his own pants, or in this case, his own wheels. And a lot of times, Percy gets into mischief. But today, Percy was in our reading engine group, and he was a good little engine. Okay? So, there we are reading Thomas the Tank Engine, because we are working on the letter T. Okay? And I might read one more book, but I'm going to take a break. So this was the second group of stories about Thomas. So let me take a break, and we'll read another one. So that'll be our third group of books, since we have our little engine reading crew here.